In this video, we're going to concentrate on making each one of these pads. On the top, we have a grippy surface. On the bottom, we have a cone set screw, which will allow us to place our work on the top of it as we finish our projects. Also in the video, I'm going to show you how you can make this circle cutting jig. It's really simple that will allow you to cut these nice clean circles. To get started, I have a 10-inch piece of plywood here that's about 3.5 inches wide, and it's about 3/4 inch thick. I'm going to draw 2 lines on the top of this. The first mark that we're going to make is we're going to start on this 3 3/4 side, and we're going to go to 6 3/4, and then we're going to come down to 7 3/4. Now we'll use a square, and we'll go ahead and draw lines across those 2 marks. And if you do make a mistake in this, it's better to have a smaller area between here than a larger area. Now we'll find the center of this line that's closest to the center, and we're going to come up to 1 3/4, which is basically the half of this block. And I'll put a mark right there. Then we'll use an awl on that mark. Because I want to mark on both sides where this hole is, I'm going to use a really thin drill bit, and I'm going to drill all the way through. And now the side with the 2 lines on the top, we're going to flip it over. So we're looking at the bottom where that hole that we made came out. I added a 5/8 Forstner bit in here. If you don't have a 5/8, you can go up to 3/4 inch. And I'm just going to drill enough below the surface that I can get the cap of a 1/4 inch carriage bolt below the surface. Now I'll switch out the 5/8 to a 1/4 inch drill bit. To prevent tear out, I'm going to add a block underneath, and I will start my drilling and go all the way through. Now I'll add a nut to the other side, the side with the 2 lines on it. I'm just going to pull that in a little bit. Just enough that the carriage bolt on the bottom is at least flush with the bottom surface. I don't want any rocking, like that's got a little bit of rock to it. And that's right below the surface. Now I can take the nut off. I've cut out 26 blocks, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an X by connecting the corners of each one of these. These are 2-inch blocks. Now we'll go ahead and use an awl, and we'll mark the center of the X. Each one of these will now get drilled out with a 1/4 inch drill bit. And if you don't feel like drawing an X on each one of these, just grab your 1/4 inch drill bit through the first one that you've done and use it to mark the rest of them. Now I've got this carpet runner here. You can get it pretty much in any hardware store. You can get it on Amazon. And I'm going to unroll it. It's got a nice, really grippy back, which is great for woodworking. I'm going to cut 3 strips off of this that are 21 inches long by about 3 inches wide. I find it's easy just to take some kind of scrap board and put it underneath, then measure out my 21 inches, and then I'll put a square on the 21 inch mark. I'll grab a utility knife, cut right along there. I'll take a straight edge like this, and I'll go up 3 inches. I'll grab my knife again, I'll just cut across there. I'll cut 2 more, and then we'll go from there. I'll add some Mod Podge to each one of these pieces. And Mod Podge is basically 1 part Elmer's glue and 1 part water, but it works really good at gluing wood to fabric. So I'll go ahead and cover each one of these, and then I'll put it in the center of each strip that I made. Now that I've got this 1 strip done, I'll go ahead and put it on my bench. Because I want to sandwich this down, I've got it right on the edge here where I can put clamps on it. I'll go ahead and do the other 2 the exact same way, and I'll stack them on top of this. Now with each layer, I'm going to add a 1x4. Here's my next layer, and the final smaller layer, the 6 block layer, I'm going to do that one separately because I won't have enough to help compact it all together. Make sure that this is all centered. Then I'm going to add a 2x4 on top, and now I'll clamp all this down. I'll start by just kind of putting them all on for right now because it does compact kind of strange-like, and we're going to try to prevent them from moving around too much. Now I'll just work my way over. I've got these all centered in the center of the block layers. And I'll try to evenly press this all at once. I want to try to keep the pressure the same all the way across. I'll go ahead and let these 20 dry, and I'll come back and do the other 6. All right, now these have all dried. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a knife of some kind. This is a utility knife. And I'm just going to cut between each one of the squares. just like that. Now that these are all cut out by hand with the utility knife, you might be really tempted to go and cut each one of these edges, but don't worry about it. It's really not necessary at all. It's probably better that you don't do that. The way our jig is going to work is we're going to cut with our bandsaw all the way on the first line here up to about the halfway mark. Then each one of the blocks will fit on the 1/4 inch bolt, and we'll spin it and cut the rest of the block. You'll need a C-clamp to clamp this onto your bandsaw, but that's pretty much it. We'll go ahead and start this up again, and we're going to go right to about the center where the bolt is. Turn off our drill press, and then again we'll use a C-clamp to clamp this on. We'll grab each block, we'll slide it on, and we'll spin it. If I'm being honest here, that circle I just cut is a little too big. So what I'll do is I'm going to move this over just a little bit, maybe about the width of the blade here, and I'll cut back into it, clamp it down, and then go from there. There we go. I've got all these put in, and it looks really good. The only problem that I have is the center one, the flange is sticking up a little too far. So when I go to put that in there, it's going to be uneven with all the rest of them. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to sand this down to get it just a little bit closer to the top of the table here. The really nice thing about plywood is that because it's layered, I can kind of watch to see how far I sand down. I'm going to try to just get that top layer right there. And as you can see, I had to sand down about 1/8 of an inch, more than I thought I was going to, but I put it on here, I took a straight edge and lined it up with the other ones. It appears that I've got this now centered, so that's good. Now on the opposite side, I want to add a bolt with a cone head on it. That will allow me to put my projects on top of it to finish them and then finish the bottom without having to worry about it touching the surface of something. So I've got a 24-inch threaded rod here, and I'm going to cut these into 3/4 inch sections and make cone heads on the sander with it. I've got another video that I made that shows how to make a jig that will make these cone head screws, these set screws. But if you don't want to make that, the other option is just to turn your threaded bolt along a sander and allow it to get that cone head. And then we'll measure down 3/4 of an inch, cut it off, and then we'll do the next one, and we'll just keep going all the way down until we get to the end. Now before we go and epoxy these cone-shaped bolts into the circles, if you find that there's any kind of fuzz left over from the cutting, just take a blowtorch. It's really quick and it'll clean it up really fast. Now I'll go ahead and mix together some epoxy. This is just the 5-minute kind. I'll put a little bit on the end and then drop it inside. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these off and we'll come back. Now for the most part, I'm pretty happy with the way that this turned out. The one problem that I found is that some of the places where I put the strips underneath, I've covered up the hole, and these pads don't sink down low enough like these other ones. Like you can see, that's a little bit lower. So I'll go ahead and drill the holes that are blocked. And you might not want all these bolts that are in the end of the pads. Maybe you just want a few of them. The one thing that I like about these is that when you put them inside each one of these holes, they have a better chance of staying if you happen to move them or tip them on their side. They have a better chance of staying in place because they are inside the holes. Of course, the center one, that's not going to be true, but if you wanted to, you could add a magnet around the inside, and then it would attach to the flange on that one. To add some magnets around the side of this is an old trick called paint transference. I've got a video that I actually made a few years ago. I'll take some nail polish and I'll put it right on the edge. Now I'll go ahead and put this on the top, and then I'll spin it around. That'll tell me where that flange is below. Now that I've got this marked, I'll go ahead and add some places where I'll drill it out for the magnets. I'll add a little bit of epoxy and then each of the little tiny magnets. And now we'll give that a little bit of time, maybe, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour to test it out. If we go to try this out, it stays in there nice. Now you might think it's unnecessary to add these magnets, but I do like that I can turn it on its side and store it away. And for the most part, it stays where it needs to be, so they're not all falling off. Of course, if you get too far, they are going to fall out. If you wanted to go a little bit farther down this rabbit hole, I guess you could put a magnet on the back side here. I don't think it's necessary, but again, that's an option that you can do. And that's it for this video. If you're interested in how I made these arms that will allow you to do things that are more round and thinner, I have another video that you'll be able to select on the web page now.